Now, with some strong language, BBC Two recalls the notorious case of 4 families from Orkney whose children were taken into care in 1991. Following allegations of rich or child sex abuse, we hear now the powerful story of those wrongly accused.
They were doing dirty stuff. So, what do they do to do the dirty stuff? What do they do?
Can someone force you to say something?
No. What do they do to do the dirty stuff?
I don't know.
Was it this again?
Yes, sticking the willy in the fanny.
That's... You said it? That's it. You've said it. So we won't ask you anything more about that.
Allegations made by a group of children from the Orkney Islands would produce one of the most controversial cases of child sex abuse in British history. It would lead to the removal of children from their parents and put a small island community against the state. Their fight to get their children back would transform the world of child protection. In 1984, 2 teachers and their young family left their home in Surrey for Orkney, a remote group of islands off the northern tip of Scotland. Sandy, William and their children joined a growing number of outsiders who came here with a dream of a simpler and better life. The family have chosen to be slightly obscured and for their surname not to be used.
We looked all over the place. We looked at the Western Isles and Arran and Shetland, and somebody put us onto Orkney as a place where land is good, climate grows grass. We got the local paper. We made numerous trips up here, made offers on half a dozen places, and in the end, got the farm in South Romsey.
It was a shock, I think. You know, when the autumn hits, it starts to get pretty blowy, and it's a bit like just being thrown into farming and everything. Not so bad at that age.
I mean, it was a good place to grow up in terms of freedom and safety and being able to be quite wild.
The family settled in South Ronaldsay, a remote island community of just 950 people, connected to the larger Orkney Islands by a concrete causeway.
Generally, it is just like any other island. People know one another. Everyone knows one another. It's not a case of you don't know who your neighbour is. When you live here, you know who your neighbour is. Oh yeah. You don't necessarily like them. You don't arrive in South Ronaldsay, go in your house and shut the door. That's not what people come here for.
Everybody knows everybody else's business. It's a close community, very close community, and it's a healthy community. It's an ideal environment to bring children up in. The quality of life can't be surpassed here.
Sandy and William began renovating the farmhouse they had bought and set up a dairy cattle business.
Orkney is an ancient civilization. Families go back a long way. Inevitably, they look at people who come in with suspicion to start with.
We'd come in, we'd probably bought a farm that somebody else would have liked. We probably paid more than they thought it was worth. Plenty of reasons to not want us. But what we found was, whilst all that was true, at the same time there was huge kindness in teaching us how to do the things that work in Orkney.
William came here, I mean, he fitted in right away. And, I mean, they just fitted in, found themselves jobs and got on with living.
The following year, another English family also moved to South Ronaldsay. Their fate would become tied with that of William and Sandy. The new arrivals had been drifting around Britain for several years. Wherever they went, they earned a reputation for being a problem family.
I was coming out to the paper shop on a Saturday morning, and my wife was with me, and we looked up just to see this Land Rover coming down off the ferry. And it was laden with furniture. It seemed to be laden with kids. And there was a horse box drawn there with the obligatory goats. And I think it was either a cow or a horse in it. And I just looked at this dishevelled family and thought, God, this is going to come my way.
The W family, as they came to be known for legal reasons, weren't welcomed by the local community as William and Sandy had been.
They didn't work, they had no visible means of support. And, I mean, they didn't fit with any other people that had ever arrived from anywhere else here.
I recall them because I was involved with Mrs. W. When she came to the island, she was going to have another baby. She was going to have her 15th baby. So as the midwife, I was involved in that.
The W's kept to themselves, but their children's reputation for causing problems just got worse.
Oh, a bit unruly, maybe a bit thiefy, wandering about the countryside at all odd times of day and night, bonfires here and there, pile of rubbish on the beach, set fire to that type of thing. They weren't acting like a normal family. I mean, a normal family covers a very, very wide range of behaviour. But they fell outside this very, very wide range of behaviour.
From the moment the W's arrived, Orkney social workers kept a close eye on them.
I was involved with the boys in the family and made regular visits to the house and had regular discussions with the educational psychologist here at the time. I found them comfortable to get on with, and although there was suspicions about their all-over behaviour, there was nothing that alarmed me initially, nothing at all.
Although social workers visited the family every couple of weeks, they failed to spot what was really happening.
We're going to school with bruises, we're going to school with, you know,
lumps and bumps and, you know, and you don't suspect anything.
One of the W children even reported their father's abuse to the authorities, but no action was taken.
It was very difficult to know when the kids were telling the truth and when they weren't. There was always suspicion that father was a harsh disciplinarian. You could see that, but nobody had any idea what was going on in the background.
One of my brothers tried to commit suicide, and that's how it came out, because he was at school in Ragdry, in Milless, and he tried to commit suicide, and because he didn't want to come home anymore at the weekends, or every second weekend, I can't remember. And then he ended up trying to commit suicide, and then they found out there was some real harsh abuse going on.
One of the children had been, as a punishment, had been placed naked in a barrel of nettles. And it was quite unbelievable, because this is something that didn't happen in Orkney, and something that I had never experienced.
The W's father was charged with 20 counts of physically abusing his children.
And then he was taken, my father, and but that was over quite a long process, because they had to have 4 statements similar of members of the family, so it was quite a long investigation, ongoing investigation, because obviously it's hard for children to go against parents no matter what, because you just don't think it's right and you feel bad, you know what I mean? And so, and then the other abuse, sexual abuse, came out.
The father pleaded guilty to 6 of a further 22 charges of sexually abusing his children. He was jailed for 7 years. The W's father may have been in prison, but the family still faced a series of problems. Orkney's education department approached William and Sandy, both trained teachers, for help with one of the girls.
She was a school refuser because father was now in jail, and so it would become impossible for her at school. It's just too difficult with the other kids getting onto her. It would be inappropriate for me as a man to teach a girl by herself if there was possibility of abuse in the family. How would she respond to a man she didn't know? So obviously couldn't work like that, but my wife is also a teacher.
I would do the English and cookery and music and things like that, and William would do the maths and science side, and it worked extremely well.
The education department also asked William and Sandy to take on a greater role with the whole W family.
Our instructions were quite clear. We were being paid to teach this girl who was the school refuser. This was the contract. However, the whole family had its problems, which had been sketched out to us briefly but not in detail. And inevitably there would be a power vacuum, a sibling rivalry situation, all sorts of things that would probably need input to sort. And any kind of time that we spent there would be valuable.
They were quite wild, free-thinking children. They had a free spirits, rather. They came with a reputation maybe for stealing and being wild, but, I mean, they were wild, but they were fun. They were lovely children. We were very fond of them. And they never stole anything from us, so you can only speak as you find.
Sandy and William would come down and visit my mum, and stuff like that, and stay for coffee, and we'd be all out playing as children. And then my mum would do vice versa, really, and we'd go up in their farm, play in the fields, because they had more land than us, so it was a lot easier to play out in the fields, you know. And also, the older ones wanted to drive the tractor and stuff like that.
With all the farm building that we were doing, we had a small quarry that we'd got building stone and road material, and it had water in the bottom. And they made boats and they swam and they played, I don't know, pirates or whatever they played. They were trying to survive after Father had been put in prison, and that couldn't be easy. But it was a family that was recovering, and it was good to see the family recovering.
The children's charity, the NSPCC, has said that the number of reports of child sex abuse has doubled in a year.
The 1980s were a time of revolution in the world of child protection. For decades, child abuse had been considered extremely rare. Children who alleged they were abused by their families rarely believed.
Last year, 30 such cases were dealt with. In the last 8 weeks alone, they've had 197. Foster homes are full, and some of the children are having to be kept in hospitals.
Led by research from America, social workers began to realise that abuse inside families was widespread and to develop new approaches to detecting it.
You began to tease out that there were lots of indicators from children that we hadn't listened to previously, which made us begin to think, this is a big problem, or a bigger problem than they originally thought it was. You could see children whom you'd had previously through your hands, and you'd think, that clearly says to me, looking back at that case, that there's something I should have looked at that I hadn't seen.
This revolution in child protection had passed Orkney by. In February 1990, a new director was appointed to sort the social work department out.
Social work had advanced so much and had reached Orkney where we had to progress and we had to change our policies and look at new policies that were out, that it called for a new director with forward thinking. And the director at that time took early retirement, and Paul Lee was introduced to us as the new manager, the new director of social work.
Paul Lee had trained in England, but for 10 years had been a senior social worker for Highland region. His approach to the W family would become the test of how far his department had come. On South Ronaldsay, other members of the community became involved in helping the Ws. The local Church of Scotland minister, Maurice Mackenzie, played a central part. A former solicitor from New Zealand, the 63-year-old Reverend and his wife had lived on the island for 10 years.
He was very, he liked pomp and ceremony. That's right. I would say that he did like that.
He was a square peg in a round hole.
I think that he liked that kind of...
yeah, he liked to dress up.
Well, I don't think... He always wore his robes. He had the right to wear the robes, and he always wore his robes.
Not 100% with it, but perfectly capable of doing his sermons and his funerals and such like. And the minister's wife sort of think, right, we can help out here, we can really do something here. So they got involved and more involved and did everything they could to help this family. I mean, the minister was genuinely trying to help this family.
Thanks to the minister and his wife, the Ws were now fully part of the community. They were even invited to South Ronaldsay's Halloween party.
Now the wonderful time. I went as a little cowboy. Just some children were dressed up as little witches and pirates and stuff like that. That was it. I remember drinking juice and having a little playing with the other children and stuff like that in this big hall.
This is the first time that this kid's ever been out at a party. Clearly the W kids were sitting in the middle of that, looking all around them, completely amazed with the situation. They'd never seen the like of it before. They'd never seen stage lights before. They'd never been involved with fancy dress.
The W's may have looked like a recovering family, but the day before the party, old problems had surfaced yet again. One of the W girls made fresh allegations of sexual abuse inside the family, this time by one of her brothers.
I can't remember ever at all having dealt with abuse cases, child abuse cases, up until this happened. There was one-off incidents, nothing as serious as here. This one just blew out of all proportion.
Orkney social workers had failed the W children once before. The new regime was determined not to fail them again. A week after the allegations were made, they took action. Social workers were sent to remove the 6 youngest W children from their school.
I was in primary 3, and my headmistress came in and she took me and my brother into a room and said we were being taken away. And my brother collapsed.
A plane was standing by to remove the children from the island. May was 7. Her brothers and sisters were aged between 4 and 13.
I started crying. I just ran. I didn't want to leave home, and I didn't want to go into care. They just physically restrained me because I was quite... I didn't want to leave, so I was kicking up quite a fuss. And they just held me by an arm, each 2 of them, and put me in the car.
Within hours, the W children had been placed in care in Glasgow. Social workers now had to discover exactly what had been going on inside the W family.
Before we could go any further, we had to establish that these incidents had in fact taken place. Now, there were grounds for belief in that Father had been imprisoned for it. To what extent it involved the rest of the family, we didn't know.
Orkney's social work department had little experience of interviewing the victims of child abuse.
So we're just going to have a chat today, okay?
Mm-hmm.
You fine with that?
Yeah.
That difficult task was given to a team from the Royal Scottish Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children, led by Liz McLean, a pioneer in her field.
Are they new?
Yeah.
I think I was simply excluded at that time because there was a strong feminist group in the social work department that seemed to exclude me from anything that was going on. It was a need-to-know basis, and the things that I wasn't told I was expected to understand. There was no questioning about why they were doing a thing and how they were going to do it. You really had to just follow on with their ideas.
Liz McLean had helped set up one of the specialist centres where the children would be interviewed, Glenavon Lodge. She had received some training in the US and championed American theories that child abuse was far more widespread than anyone realised. She was supported by a social worker newly brought in to look after the W's, Jeanette Chisholm.
The theories from America helped people to understand why children's behaviour was as it was. You got a child who was a wild child, whose behaviour was appalling. You got a young girl who was running away from home. You got all the difficulties that parents said, you know, this is a difficult child, this child will say and do anything. And the theories that came along helped us to see that these, in fact, behaviours could be symptoms of child sexual abuse.
On the 21st of November 1990, Liz McLean and a police officer began interviewing the W children. Some of the interviews were recorded. The following are extracts from those interviews. The names of the children have been changed.
Do you think it's really, really hard to talk about?
Of course.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think?
Because it's tiring.
It's tiring? Why else? Why else do you think it's hard to talk about it? Because I know why. I think it's hard to talk about, but why else do you think it's hard to talk about? Keely? Keely?
I don't want to talk about it.
Why do you think it's really, really hard to talk about this?
Because it's rude.
Liz McLean quickly began to get results. Within a week, one of the W children said that there had been abuse inside the family from one of the brothers. Shortly after, Liz McLean received a piece of information that would dramatically alter the nature of her investigation. A new name turned up, that of Reverend Maurice Mackenzie. One of the older W girls, aged 15, claimed Maurice had made wild, passionate love to her. For the first time, social workers faced the prospect that the abuse on Orkney was not confined to the W family. They began to ask about other adults the children had come into contact with. On South Ronaldsay, the islanders knew nothing of these allegations. Some were outraged the children had been taken and began a campaign to have them returned. They wrote letters of complaint to the social work department, met their MP and leafleted in Kirkwall, Orkney's capital.
We went to Kirkwall and distributed this to people in the street corners, outside Safeways, put it on car windscreens, anything to raise the profile of why had this happened.
Why did you feel so strongly about it?
Because the family was coming together and they were better with their mother. They were an alternative, recovering family. And this was a desperately, savagely cruel thing to do to a family after the trauma that they'd been through.
They also wrote letters to the W children. Letters that would become significant when social workers interpreted the contents as carrying coded messages.
There were lots of days when there were lots of rainbows. You try and write to children things that they understand and that are non-controversial. Lots of us, totally independently, wrote about rainbows.
The patterns of references to rainbows, and also to animals in these letters, alerted Liz McLean to a drastic notion. That some islanders were seeking to control the children through the use of rituals as part of a wider paedophile ring.
It's easy for a father to say, your mother will die if she hears this, or some awful threat like that. But for children in a wider setting, you need different kinds of fears. And I believe that the rituals are the kind of fears that will instill fear in children and will make them submissive to what's happening.
Ever since the first reports of ritual abuse in daycare centers surfaced in 1984, the therapeutic community has become increasingly concerned about this most bizarre form of child abuse.
Throughout the 80s, there had been numerous startling reports of paedophile rings involving satanic and ritual abuse.
Ritualized abuse of children by devil worshippers.
Ritualistic abuse. Allegations of satanic ritual abuse.
Most had been in America, but the previous year, controversial cases of alleged ritual abuse in Nottingham and Rochdale had made British headlines. Liz McLean and her team were looking for evidence of such a ring on Orkney. They turned their attention to the parties the children had attended on the island.
What sort of games do they play at the tea club?
What's the name of the game they play most at the tea club?
I don't know.
Well, they play a football game.
A football game?
We'll see who can do the most game. And they play a happy game.
No, they don't. Bullshit.
Do they play a loving game? A love game?
Bullshit.
What do they get to eat at the tea club? What do they get to eat?
Orange and biscuits.
Orange juice.
Yeah, watch this.
Is it nice tasting orange juice?
Yep.
And do the big people and the little people drink the orange juice?
Can you read this to me?
Yeah. After you tell me, do the big people and the little people drink the orange juice?
I've worked with children who, as part of a ritual, drink was passed around. I don't mean alcoholic drink. I don't mean that, because the drinks would be described often as sweet and fruity. But after the drinks had been taken, the children weren't aware really of what was happening to them. The children had no real memories of what happened after that. And these drinks were passed out as part of a ritual.
Liz McLean and her colleagues suspected they had uncovered a paedophile ring, but the interviews with the children had yet to confirm it.
Maybe, yeah.
3 months after taking the W children into care, they got the breakthrough they had been working for.
I remember this drawing.
I like this drawing. I'll put something in the end of the paper. Now, where we start? Can you remember where you said it was?
Yeah, in the field.
Uh-huh. And who's this?
What does that say?
Well, you tell me. Because that's what you told us and I wrote it down.
Who's this?
Morris.
What's he doing?
Cooking.
And who's he hooking?
Leo.
Leo. And what did he do when he hooked Leo?
He rubbed his chin on him and threw him back in the circle.
And who did he hook after that? Who did he hook after that?
Alice.
Alice. What did he do with Alice? was that you're doing there just now? You're putting... You know what you're doing. You tell me. You put what?
See it quickly.
Who's Willie and Fanny?
He put the willy in the fanny.
Liz McLean was now convinced she had uncovered a major paedophile ring, its existence apparently confirmed by 3 of the W children. Crucially, they named names. The ring included at least 4 other families from the island, including Sandy and William. At its heart was the Reverend Maurice Mackenzie. According to the W children, members of the ring would gather at Sandy and William's quarry at night and dance in a circle with Maurice in the middle. He would hook the children into the centre and have sexual intercourse with them, followed in turn by the adults. In the past, the W children had not been believed when they made allegations of abuse. This time, there would be no such doubts.
My experience of these children was that they talked the truth to me. I never heard any of them tell me a story that I doubted. When they tried to explain things to you, they worked hard at helping you to understand, and you knew what they were saying was okay. So that's my experience of them.
Orkney's social work department were left with little choice but to act. Nine children were feared to be seriously at risk of abuse if left with their parents. At dawn, on February the 27th, 1991, a fleet of cars packed with social workers and police crossed the causeway to South Ronaldsay.
It was carving time. We were still in bed. It was about 7 o'clock. Just getting light. And there was a knock on the door. We wondered if it might be a neighbour coming for help with the carving.
But it wasn't that. It was a very heavy-handed presence. The moment it's happened, you have a phenomenal adrenaline rush.
They were obviously coming in, so we invited them in. They said they were coming to take the children.
Okay. Can we actually make our way upstairs, please?
William looked at, or tried to look at identity, and I went up to the children.
We had just decorated my bedroom so I didn't touch the wallpaper. My bed was away from the wall. And so I woke up with people all around the bed. And that was, you know, a strange way to wake up and you sort of get a gist of what's going on.
You need to get dressed right away. Okay.
Was told to get dressed, and I was watched while I got dressed and told that we couldn't take anything.
Ben thought of escaping, but didn't want to leave his brother.
Bizarrely, my friend and I had exchanged our shoes the day before on the bus on the way home, just for a laugh. And so I didn't actually have any suitable shoes to take away with me, so I was sort of looking around for some shoes to take, because I couldn't take his shoes because he needed them returned to him. And this must have seemed awfully suspicious that I was sort of running around looking for shoes. Eventually took a second pair.
We're Quakers and we don't fight. So it's not in our nature to cause a scene. I don't think there could be much worse for children than to see their parents restrained, which is what obviously would happen if necessary. Otherwise, why do you send half a dozen cops? See what I mean? But it indicates really how little they knew about us.
You have to keep some sort of dignity so that the children can have something strong to remember. So I said, remember who they were, in the hope that that would keep them strong. Because there was nothing else you could do, because the authorities were there with their power and their madness, and they wouldn't see reason.
Must have had a brief word to Dad and Mum, but I just recall Mum and wanted to give her a hug, and a policewoman told me that I couldn't. So I told her to fuck off, and did anyway. And then we were out, and into the car.
Seven children from 3 other families were also taken from their parents. The convoy made its way back to Kirkwall.
They hadn't had breakfast. I wanted to give them breakfast. I wanted to tell them that it would be all right. I wanted time to make the children understand, or to allow the children to understand what was happening. Not just plucked from the family and pushed into a car and driven. The children didn't know where they were going. We didn't know where they were going.
Police now searched the 4 homes of the accused parents and that of Reverend Maurice Mackenzie. They had been given a list of satanic indicators to help them search for evidence of ritual abuse.
I think they took the aluminium crook that we used for catching sheep. They took all the kids' videos, which were stuff taped off the television. They took an ordinary leather dress belt, Sandy's mother's.
They took a pair of Moroccan dressing gowns with hoods. They took a cowboy hat.
Within hours, the children were flown out of Orkney. 9 children in all were taken, 5 boys and 4 girls. The youngest was 8, the oldest 15. None of the parents was told where their children were being taken, or when, if ever, they would see them again. That same afternoon, the 9 children were on the Scottish mainland. Some were taken to the Highlands, others to Glasgow. In charge of finding them homes in the Glasgow area was senior social worker Philip Green.
I found it kind of a bit sad, and taking the fish out of water. These kids were from this wee island community, and here they're being brought down to, I think for some of them for the first time, down to the big bad city to be divvied up and placed in different placements.
Social workers decided all the children were to be split up, including siblings.
We were allowed to say goodbye to each other when he got off at Inverness and I had to go on to Glasgow. But brief, just, remember, be strong, look after yourself. And we did a handshake, which was like a family handshake, which our older brother had invented, which was, I'm sure, very suspicious and didn't help us in the long run at all.
It was pretty alarming. because with my brother came a sense of home, and it was somewhere I knew that was safe, at least, if you see what I mean. But then from there on, you don't know where you're going.
The older child shouldn't be placed with the younger child for a number of reasons. One is they will manipulate the younger child when they've got access to them. The other is that maybe they're abusers themselves. And it's quite often the case, in families where abuse happens, that the older child becomes an abuser. They take on the same habits as the parents or the abusers.
The children were to be placed in new homes. But first they were taken to hospital for a medical.
Told that it was a medical to test that I was in good health, and then told to strip from the waist down and given an examination of my genitals, including an anal swab and that sort of stuff. So obviously looking for signs of sexual interference.
Ben was then taken to his new home outside Glasgow, a young offenders institution.
It's an unbelievable situation. I mean, it's not like you've committed a crime and you've been on the run and you've finally been caught. It's like you're just at school and the next day you're at school in a borstal in Glasgow.
Alex was placed with a foster family on a farm outside Inverness.
It was the first time we sort of stopped, I guess, because we'd sort of been travelling and stopping and travelling and stopping, and this was somewhere I was actually stopping. And I remember I cried with the foster mother, and she was sort of hugged me, and I think I cried with the foster father as well, and it was the same thing. They were great, but it was just sort of an emotional release, I guess.
You're trying to behave in the most dignified manner that you can, when internally you're completely freaking out. You just have no idea what's going to happen. You're nothing about anything you're doing is in your hands anymore. Nothing. You're just trying to make it through.
Within hours of the children's removal, the whole of South Ronaldsay had heard what had happened.
They said there's been a dawn raid in Orkney. What nonsense! We couldn't believe it, a dawn raid. What's a dawn raid? And we thought drugs, and we didn't know what to think. It was just dreadful.
People were in an absolute blind panic about should they let their children go to school? Was it safe to let their children out of their sight? I think that was the thing I remember most is, wanting the doctor, because I think people do turn to the doctor in times of crisis, and they were wanting the doctor to tell them that everything was all right.
2 days later, the islanders gathered to discuss what had happened. The village hall was packed.
We had to have some sort of public meeting because you could feel the fear. You could feel people were not knowing what was happening.
I know the district nurses spent a very long time ringing round trying to get somebody to chair the meeting, and nobody would. They would come, but they would not put their heads above the parapet as chairman because of the total fear. Well, I've got children, I've got grandchildren, I don't think I can, I would like to do this, but I don't think I can, because will my kids be next? And I think that is hellish, to do that to a community. So I said I would chair it, by default, really.
What I'd like to do to start us off is ask a member of each of the 4 families who've had children removed from Orkney to give us a brief factual account of what happened on Wednesday morning.
We didn't know what the reaction would be. We obviously had some friends who would be supportive. That doesn't speak for the whole population. So we didn't know what the overall mix of the meeting would have as a reaction.
The police showed me their identification. I wrote down who they were. The social workers, I asked for their identification. They didn't have any. So I said I did not accept them as being social workers.
As I said before, we're English, we're Newcomers, we don't speak Orcadian. We appeared, or the situation had undoubtedly brought scandal, if you like, to the island. It would have been a reasonable reaction from some to say, oh, just get out and go and fight your battle somewhere else.
We didn't know if we'd almost be asked to leave at the meeting. Would people rise up and say go? It was quite scary going into the meeting.
There is one thing which suddenly made me realise the whole thing was serious. Suddenly I wanted to go upstairs to the bathroom. I went to the door and I was immediately grabbed by 2 policemen. And I suddenly realised that we were being restrained, and that these people had the right to restrain us, that these people had come into our home, and that we were suddenly not free. And yes, our children were going to be taken away from us, and there was nothing we could do about it. We can't even remember how we said goodbye to them. My wife keeps asking me, did we hug them?
I think people came in not really knowing what was going to happen, what was going to be said, but it was very much a feeling that our community was being invaded.
And I went back into the house and they said, well, you better get your little boy. By this time, the little boy had come down the stairs and run to Mummy and holding on to me. And during the time, I mean, I did fight. I did elbow my way and pushed them out of the way and did hold on to the children for a while, in actual fact. And they said, this is no good, and they just could hold my wrists and my hands, and they took that from me.
Well, it was electric, really, and it was just unbelievable. And
probably hardly a dry eye in the place. Really.
I know.
I think once all the parents had spoken, anybody in that room who doubted the rightness of campaigning to get those children brought home had all doubts removed.
I am absolutely shaking with rage that this could have happened to our community. Absolutely shaking.
Well, the people got more and more pissed off. That's the word, pissed off. I mean, maybe you can't transmit that, but that's how they start to feel. Something was badly, badly wrong with the system.
They portray a scene like this, somewhere at or near our quarry. Lots of loud music from this hi-fi on the trailer. Bright gas lights. People dancing round. Morris in the middle. What did you miss? Where were you? For goodness sake. You know where our farm is. You know how many neighbours can see us. Those neighbours know our business better than us.
I listened to what these parents said. I thought that the police and social work departments had gone mad, berserk, just completely bonkers. Why were they acting like that? And also an enormous feeling of impotence, because you know that these are big government organisations. It felt a bit like taking on the world, really. And it was very overwhelming.
The 9 children were now taken to specialist centres where the alleged abuse would be investigated. None of their medical tests had shown any signs of abuse. The social worker's case that a ritual paedophile ring existed on the island would have to rely on the children's testimony.
What you've got to have is something you can prove. If you can't prove that, then you're going nowhere. It's very difficult to prove child sexual abuse. If you don't have physical evidence, and very rarely you do, then you've got to have either an extremely credible story from the child and credit from elsewhere. You're looking for credible backup stories from elsewhere.
So you were telling us about...
Once again, the interviews would be led by Liz McLean. She worked with a model developed in the US, which assumed that children were so traumatised by their abuse that they would often deny it had ever happened. The job of the social worker was discovery, the uncovering of what the children were suppressing.
Even if there's some discovery, even if somebody finds out something and you're asked questions, what you say never makes sense to an adult mind who doesn't want to hear it. It's never heard right. Not at all, because they don't use the words we used. They don't say, my daddy fucked me last night. They say, my mum doesn't listen to me. You don't get the right story from a child.
The day after the children were taken from their homes, Liz McLean began the interview sessions.
Liz McLean was there, and she's a very large woman and quite intimidating in a sort of friendly way, if you understand what I mean. So there'll be a sort of a mean air about her while seeming to be nice, if you sort of mean. You know, sort of, oh, come on, you know, everything's okay. But, you know, but we know that something's happened to you. We know this. So it's a nice, soft voice, but it's, you know, relentless, doesn't stop. And it's sort of, I suppose, quite monotone in a way.
Transcripts of the interviews with some of the 9 children show how social workers pushed their agenda. This interview with an 8-year-old was conducted by one of Liz McLean's colleagues.
That's nice.
We just want to make sure you're all right.
Why did you take me anyway? No one was hurting me.
Just in case you want to come and speak to us about anything. In case there was a wee secret or anything you want to talk about.
No. Why would you think that?
Well, remember we heard that had happened.
All right. If I tell you something, you have to do my laces up.
Right. That's a good deal then. What is it? What do you want to tell me?
I'll tell you something.
What?
You're both pricks. Now tie my laces up. I told you something.
In fact, all the children denied they had been abused. But this didn't discourage Liz McLean. On the model she worked from, children usually denied abuse. The interviews continued into week 2.
I think the kind of questions they would ask would be, you know, sort of tell me about this, or I know that you've been doing this with this person, and you're like, of course, no, I haven't, don't be ridiculous. But we know that you have. No, don't be ridiculous, I haven't, you know, but we know that you have, and this would go on for some time.
Well, if it's a secret, they'll deny, you see. As long as it's a secret, denial will come. And the denials come for the same reason that the secrecy's there. They're keeping something safe, be it themselves, their family, whatever, you know, the threats about if you don't do it, I'll have to go to your little sister or whatever. The denials are keeping something safe and it's a secret.
So what would they say when you said nothing's happened? I mean, you kept saying nothing's happened.
we have information that you don't. We know something has happened. We have this information. We know something has happened. We know something has happened. That's what they've kept repeating, saying.
On South Ronaldsay, the community united to get the children back. They set up an action committee.
I don't think that we had a plan. I don't think we had an idea. We just knew that we were right, that children should not be treated like that. What we did was got some very good lawyers and, I have to say, used the media.
In the days after the meeting, the media swarmed to South Ronaldsay. What had been a local story hit the national headlines.
Parents in the Orkney Islands have demanded the immediate return of 9 children taken into care after allegations of ritual sex abuse.
Having all this media attention focused, I think a conscious decision was then made, right, you know, if these chaps are going to, you know, make programmes and news bits about us and write bits in the newspaper about us, they're going to hear our side of the story.
We find it incomprehensible that anything has happened to these children. We just cannot believe it. I mean, you've obviously seen the geography of our island, and secretiveness is not one thing that is practised here.
Even Maurice Mackenzie came forward to talk to the press.
What they thought was happening was that they were all dancing, they had lights and music, and then I was in the circle wearing sort of this black cloak and hooking them in, and then at that stage presumably having some sexual act with them in the course of either when hooked in or the process of being hooked in. They weren't very sure about that.
Have you done this?
No.
We are abysmal at dealing with articulate middle classes, social work department. We're great at dealing with inarticulate poor. So a lot of the work that we do is based on our work with the inarticulate poor. I'm deriding my own organisation, but that's the reality of the situation. And if anything, the Orkney families were very, very good at getting the press on their side and articulating their problem.
We are middle-class, boring people with boring lives. It's inconceivable that we would even have thought of a carry-on like this.
Have you ever known anybody who would say, yes, sir, I did it? Sorry, but I did it. It doesn't happen. I mean, your average abuser is a pillar of the community. You know, they've a lot to lose.
The community's campaign, their stalwart defence of the parents, raised further suspicions among social workers.
They had convinced themselves that though these 4 families were the main abusers, maybe, that probably the doctor and the district nurse and everybody was a bit suspect.
People were frightened. They were very, very frightened, yes, because there was lots and lots of rumours about other lists.
Yeah.
And people were coming saying to us, oh, this is just the tip of the iceberg. You've no idea, there's more children going, there's another list ready, and they're going to come and they're going to take your children.
One rumour in particular has been circulating, that social workers have the names of 20 other children they're investigating.
The main fear is that this so-called list of 20 has become common knowledge, and whether it's real or imaginary, people perceive it as real, and other parents in the community are very worried that more children are going to be uplifted.
It wasn't all in the islanders' imagination. The head of Orkney's Social Work Committee told the council they would take every child from South Ronaldsay if they had to.
Well, there was rumours that some of the farmers were going to stand with guns at the barriers and keep any more social workers from the island.
There seemed to be an extraordinary number of marine distress flares in people's houses, and a lot of really pissed off farmers with shotguns under the beds. Oh yeah, they meant business. Real business, and really, really pissed off.
Sandy, William and the other Orkney parents had now been without their children for 3 weeks. They were forbidden from seeing them, writing to them or speaking with them on the phone. All contact was stopped by the social work department.
The children had been taken away with no personal possessions. My mother had recently died. She'd given a teddy bear to him. We gave it in good faith to the social work department. I think with a label around its neck saying, "Please look after this bear," like Paddington, hoping that he would see some sort of humour in it. And it never got to him. Nobody could get it through to him. When we got it back, this poor teddy bear had been ripped open.
The thinking behind it was that you could have hidden messages in letters or hidden messages even through a toy. The kind of paranoia that builds up. Would this teddy have a symbolic meaning to this child? Would the giving of this teddy mean that I've still got a hold on you? And some abusers, and having seen a lot in the past, have quite subtle ways of controlling children. Subtle messages that somebody that doesn't know this scene, you wouldn't know what that subtle message was, and that there is actually a control within what appears to be a nice thing. Hindsight seems very silly, but at the time it seemed relevant.
Sandy, William and the other families received very limited information about their children. They had no sense of whether they would ever see them again.
We knew that our oldest son, who was then 15, was in a secure unit. My worst fear was that he would be raped and catch AIDS. And I knew I was on the edge of madness. It's not a pleasant place to be. It's not even interesting. It's just bad.
What made you think that you were on the edge of madness?
Because I'd never been there before, and it was dire and big and scary and out of control, and nobody could help. And I wanted to scream and scream and scream.
Back at the Disclosure Centre, the interviews continued into week 4. After nearly a month in care, the 9 children had already faced over 60 interviews. The social workers were running out of time. They would soon have to present their evidence in court. They returned to drawing techniques that had helped produce the original allegations of abuse by the W children.
They had like a roll of wallpaper, and it was sort of, they would sort of begin questions along a line of, this is, talking about rings of people or things like that. And we're sort of, I'm not a very good drawer, could you draw this for me, please?
If there's a circle there,
Circle of what?
and you drew someone in it, say you put someone in the middle, there, who would be in the middle of the circle?
I don't know. It's just my imagination.
What's that person's name?
I was just doing that. My imagination. Just making fun.
What's the person's name that's in the middle of the circle? Do they have a name?
Nope. It's Mr. Nobody.
I've got an idea. Why don't you draw him?
That's a good idea.
Okay.
You draw this person in the middle. I would like to see this person in the middle.
You want to be obliging as a child with adults. And it was just, you know, sort of heads drawn sort of vertically, as in sort of a crow's eye view from above, of a sort of ring of people with somebody in the centre, and you don't know why you're being asked to draw this, so you don't resist, as it were. And then you start to get an idea that it's not, you don't necessarily want to have done that, and maybe you were foolish to have done it, and you feel kind of stupid, duped.
Do you remember where you said it was?
Yeah, in the field.
Despite the pressures placed upon them, none of the 9 children admitted to being abused.
Who's that?
Today, the W children, who made the original allegations of abuse, say they too were pressured and coaxed by Liz McLean, that the stories they told of abuse at the ring around the quarry were all made up.
Who's that?
She'd lock the door and she would say, if you want some sweets and if you want to watch a cartoon, you can, only after you do this drawing for me. She would say, I suppose you remember going walking around that quarry and things like that. I suppose you remember doing that, don't you? And in order to get out of a room, eventually you'd break down after like an hour or so of saying, no, this never happened. I don't remember it. I don't even know what you're talking about. Her frustration to me, I used to get very scared of her, intimidated by her. So I would break down after an hour or so and saying, I don't actually remember saying yes to anything, but other than that, I can't imagine how I got out of the room if I didn't say yes. But I don't remember saying yes to anything.
I walked to school. You'd take yourself to school? Yeah.
A month after they had begun, the interviews with the children stopped. The case was to be heard in a Scottish court. Hearings over the weeks ahead would decide the future of the 9 children. At the beginning of April, social workers prepared their case. Armed with the original allegations made by the W's, they would argue that all the children were at risk, that they should all be kept in care indefinitely.
I knew that because they got me before 16, they could hold me for 3 years. And it was the fear that that's the way it might go down, and my parents might end up in prison, and, you know, my brother's away for, what, 7 years, and trying to deal with that as a possibility.
On the 4th of April, 5 weeks after the children were taken away, the parents and their supporters gathered at the court.
Lawyers for the families will press for more time to read transcripts of nearly 40 hours of tape-recorded interviews with the children who will not be at the court, although they will be legally represented.
So didn't have any great expectations. The fine and faithful friends and family were still outside the courtroom, as they had been through the 5 weeks.
And just huge anxiety as to whether the court system was strong enough. This was our overriding concern.
Well, he'd been sent the tapes, and the more he talked, the more you could see that this was actually a proper lawgiver who was looking at the facts with an open mind.
Well, for me, it was a gradual dawning. That it wasn't immediate, that as he started to talk, you're sort of shaking yourself, are we really hearing this? Is this really what he's saying?
And it just got better and better. So we could have all leapt out and hugged him, and
I think absolute amazement that he appeared to be saying this is a load of rubbish, and I'm not even going to let it go any further at all.
The sheriff was highly critical of the way the children had been interviewed and threw the case out of court.
And I believe that in the child's, for the child's sake, was an awful decision. Awful.
Why?
Because it just leaves the children as liars. And the other children were question marks.
Friends and supporters cheered and clapped as the parents emerged from the courthouse, the case against them dismissed by a sheriff who roundly condemned the way the social work authorities had handled the case. The sheriff also condemned social work interviews with the children, who he said had been subjected to cross-examinations designed to break them down and admit to being abused. It was no way to get at the truth.
The sheriff's decision didn't guarantee the immediate return of the children. The social work department could launch an appeal, so keeping the children in care.
We still didn't know that the children would come back when we left the court. There were friends and families there. And it became obvious that we had to go to the social work department and politely ask for our children back, please.
Let's have the director to make a statement.
Yes, we will call Lee.
If you will admit that you are an abuser, I will do everything to help you. An abused person can never fully recover until the abuser admits her guilt.
You're not going out. You have made innocent children and families suffer.
What are you going to do about it?
Can I ask that we...
Nobody's listening to you anymore. We've heard what the sheriff had to say.
Please, no, we want the children home. What are you going to do about it?
It was very polite, in parts. It was briefly heated, but he didn't really have an option in that Colby had thrown it out and said the children would be safer home. Really, what we were trying to get out of him was that he would get them home that night.
Calm down! You took our children! You took our children! You made them suffer! You made them... say, the police are coming, we need to clear out.
They said, we'll get them home if we can. So he said, you chartered a plane to take them out. You can charter a plane to get them back.
Can I get past you, gentlemen?
Once again, the power of the community prevailed.
We're told you have to get these kids now, they have to be returned ASAP, and there was a huge panic ensued as we had to go looking around from everything, from where are these children, what's happening with them, gathering the children together.
Within hours, the children were on a plane back to Orkney.
It was great to see my brother again, and we all had new clothes because they'd taken us with the clothes on our backs. They had to buy us all new clothes while we were there, so it was just talking over what we'd done and things we'd got and things that kids are important to kids, if you see what I mean.
There was a mixture from the children of anger and euphoria and not knowing what was really happening. You know, we'd been told they were going home and it was like that. It was suddenly one day they're going for all this disclosure work, they've been told they've been protected and all the rest of it. And the next were on a plane. At that point I was still of the opinion that they had been abused. And to some extent I still am. I don't know whether they were or weren't. I felt intensely angry and I felt really sad for these children because we'd failed them.
It's It's about an hour from Inverness to Orkney, so we were on the plane that I think the social workers and police and we're sort of sitting up at the back, and they'd sort of given up by that point. We were out of there. That was it, as far as they were concerned. They weren't trying to stop us from interacting or anything anymore.
The kids were swearing and just loudly talking to each other about sex and stuff like that. In the full knowledge, and looking at us, in the full knowledge, we just could sit there. And that was quite harrowing for us. I had a child come up to me and ask me if I wanted a wank. And I just had to sit there embarrassedly and not say anything. And I found that very, very upsetting, personally.
Kirkwall Airport had been open specially. One of the mothers had asked for a piper, so there was a piper there. Balloons? It felt very happy, very expectant.
Philip Green had the job of handing the children over to their parents.
I felt like shite. I felt terrible. I felt really quite awful. I just felt I'd betrayed them. I mean, everything that I'd represented for years in childcare I thought was being flushed down the toilet as I was there, and I felt quite bad about it.
Could see them through the windows coming, but we weren't allowed to go out to meet them. We had to wait for them to come in. I think it was about security or something. They thought we'd get run over by the plane or whatever. But, it's just needing to touch them as much as anything, to really believe they're home.
Teaching the cynicism, yeah.
When you get your children back, after everything, you can't remember what you said because words aren't important. It's just the people that are important, and you hug them and cry and hug them and...
What was it like taken away from your mum?
The next day, the families posed for a photo opportunity at the quarry where the ritual abuse was supposed to have taken place. While the 9 children were returned that day, the W's were not. Social workers continued to insist they were at risk of abuse and kept them in care for years after.
I was kept in care till I was 13. They actually took me away from my home, and they did that to my childhood. They took away my childhood. It's really sad that they can't just hold their hands up and say, wait a minute, we actually did get it wrong, and we're really sorry. We did a lot of damage. I don't know.
No charges were ever brought against Reverend Maurice Mackenzie. He died in 2003. The public inquiry into the case was highly critical of Orkney Social Work Department. Sandy, William and the other parents were all completely cleared. There had been no ritual abuse on Orkney. But to this day, some of the social workers involved in the case refused to accept the children's assertions that they were not abused.
When we talked to some of the children, they said none of it happened.
Have you read the chapter on retractions? I can't decide things happened or didn't happen. I can't say that at all. But people saying things didn't happen doesn't affect me in the slightest, because that's my experience of what people always say. I'd be very surprised if they said it did. Very.
Liz McLean, who was heavily criticised by the official report for the way she interviewed the children, eventually left social work. None of her colleagues has seen or heard from her since. Sandy, William and 2 of their children still live on the Orkney Islands. They have just renovated another farmhouse.
They picked the wrong community. It would have been very easy for the community to have accepted it and said, oh, that's terrible, I didn't think that could have been happening from them. Oh, that's terrible. But they didn't. They knew that it was wrong. They knew that we were innocent. They picked up the fight and they ran with it. And they gave more than anyone could ever have asked or expected of them. And without them, we wouldn't be home.
Imagine a line 25,000 miles long, which travels through Africa, Latin America and Asia.
We just crossed the equator!
Simon Reeves circumnavigates the globe